Welcome to today's meeting of the ESPO Management Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will also be available for viewing after the meeting. We have received apologies from Councillor Butlin from Warwickshire, who is being represented by Councillor Richard Baxter Payne, who is via Teams, I believe. Councillor Wayne Fitzgerald from Peterborough has apologised, and also Councillor Sue Rawlings and Bryony Goodliff, who are also attending by Teams. So have we any other apologies? Oh yes, right. I should have remembered that one. Councillor Jameson has unfortunately got COVID, so he couldn't travel today, so I apologise. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I'm just been told that Councillor Ferguson is online as well, so welcome to him.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so first item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of November 2022. And I'd like to propose that the minutes of the meeting held on that date are taken as read and confirmed and signed. Is everyone in agreement with that? So the second item is to advise any items that the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda, and there are no urgent items. Declarations of interest in respect of items on this agenda. Does any member have any interest that they wish to declare? No? Okay, then we get to items referred by the Finance and Audit Subcommittee. The members will note that the issues considered by the subcommittee are covered in items 5, 7 and 13, which appear elsewhere on the agenda. So we'll move to item 5, which is the annual internal audit plan. And Neil Jones, Head of Internal Audit and Assurance at Leicester County Council, will introduce the annual internal audit plan for 23-24, which is covered on pages 11 to 18 in your pack.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. So I will provide a very brief introduction as to the planning methodology and why we do it, and then I'll pass on to Matt Davis, who's the audit manager with responsibility for ESPO, and he can answer any questions about specific audits should you wish. So, as you mentioned, County Council provides the internal audit function for ESPO. We have to abide by a thing called the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards, and those standards require me to provide an annual opinion at the end of the year. So that'll be coming to the May committee of ESPO Management Committee, but that opinion is on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of ESPO's control environment. So that's its frameworks of governance, risk management and control. So that opinion is then later referred to in your governance reporting arrangements. So at the start of the year, in order to form the opinion at the back end of the year, we prepare a wide-ranging risk-based audit plan of audits based around ESPO's goals and what risks they have. So that plan was received by the Finance and Audit Subcommittee, which acts as the board for the purposes of internal audit, at its meeting on the 15th of February. And the subcommittee considered the plan. It did ask for clarification on a couple of audits, but it then supported the methodology used and recommended that it be put forward for approval by Management Committee at its meeting today. So later on the agenda, I note that there are the revised terms of reference for the subcommittee. Should they be approved, then in future the subcommittee will approve the plan. It won't have to come to Management Committee. And then once the plan is approved, I will share it with the heads of internal audit of all the other members of the consortium. So in brief, planning methodology, and we were asked about this last time. So it is the responsibility of the Director of ESPO and his leadership team to identify and manage risk. And wherever possible, what we do then is we align our audit plan to the corporate risk register and business strategy that comes through from ESPO. So we follow consultations with the Director and his leadership team, consortium treasurer and secretary on emerging risks, and look for any plan changes and potential issues. We also try to compare against similar purchasing consortia audit plans, and then we horizon scan for any emerging risks from professional sources. Part of the plan, which Matt may explain further on, contains annual audits on key elements of financial and IT systems. These can be used by your external auditors to assist in their annual planning. And then should there be any significant projects, for example, on IT or business growth developments, then they might be targeted for audit. Things like GDR compliance, though, is inextricably linked to Leicestershire County Council, so any audits of that would be relevant to ESPO. That's how we go about building up the plan. I'll leave to Matt now just to explain a little bit more about the detail.
Doesn't appear to work, so I'll use Neil's. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, so the initial plan is found on in the appendices on page 17. It provides for 150 days worth of audit work. It also incorporates within that a small amount of resource to finalise the current year audits. Obviously, the audits do not end on the 31st of March. I'm sure you'll appreciate there is an element of lap over, but not too much. The plan itself will be available to the head of audit to form an opinion on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of ESPO's control environment. So that'll help enable him to do that. When I said previously it's a wide range of audits, to me, just pulling out a few areas, the plan itself affords a good blend of traditional key financial audit work, IT audit related work, key changes, for example, the warehouse, revised procurement regulations, which I think is the next paper, emerging risks, and areas such as hybrid working. It covers counter-fraud as well, particularly in the areas of procurement and the use of data analytics, and also the National Fraud Initiative. And finally, in the wide range, other key areas of the business, which I've put down here, some examples of being supply chain audit and rebates audit. Most importantly, I think for this committee as well, is the plan has been mapped to the ESPO risk register to ensure that all the key risks are being addressed. Moving back to the report itself, paragraph 15 explains that the plan itself is only a statement of intent, and it may be necessary to review and adjust and respond to changes. And the way we do that, or why we do that, sorry, is obviously to align with any changes in ESPO's business risks, operations, programs, their systems and controls. So it is important to be flexible, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, but it's also important to have a process for that. And the process is the audit manager will discuss and agree any material changes with the director of ESPO and the consortium treasurer, and these will be actually reflected and reported to the relevant committee depending on timing. Paragraph 17 explains our role and responsibility to carry out independent and objective audits and to give an opinion on the extent to which risk is being managed, and obviously where appropriate to make recommendations to improve controls. Each audit scope, timing and areas of exclusion are agreed with the relevant risk owners in advance. So that's the process, and on completion, again, the process, any recommendations will be discussed with the risk owners and practitioners. It's important to have a report that's not got any surprises in, because there may be compensating controls that we weren't aware of. So it's particularly important to me to make sure the report is agreed where at all possible. The draft is then compiled and agreed with the risk owner and the practitioners. And obviously the final report is issued to the director and the treasurer, as well as the other people that have been involved in the audit. Progress and outcomes are reported each quarter to the director and the treasurer, and more formally to the Finance and Audit Subcommittee at the scheduled meetings. But obviously any urgent matters in the interim will be taken to Management Committee. If any audit report produces what we call a high importance recommendation based on analysing that and comparing that to the risk management policy in terms of impact and likelihood, then a full report can be shared with the subcommittee and or the management committee depending on timing. And also we then will specifically retest the areas of high importance, hopefully in year depending on the timing of the implementation date, but try to actually clear them up before the end of the year. Obviously, it's not always practical because sometimes some of the recommendations might take a while to implement for various valid reasons. So that is the actual process and the plan itself. Obviously, Neil or I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Does anybody have any comments or questions they'd like to make?
Neil, thank you ever so much. Very good report. Just two questions, really. There's an indicative 150 days of work, and is that resourced appropriately? You have sufficient staff to deal with that? My second question would be in terms of prioritisation. If you had to drop anything out because something urgent came up, how would you prioritise what you would take off the list? Thank you.
On the resource front, the answer is yes, thankfully. We had a pretty good year last year in recruiting. An internal audit is like any other sort of function. It's really struggled for recruiting, but we managed to take in 3 senior auditors, all from outside the local authority organisations, which was fantastic. Yeah, do you want to pass it over to?
Yeah. With regard to the actual audits and audits we would drop, first of all, there'd be a decision as to whether we could actually, whether ESPO would be willing to buy any more time to actually complete the audits, depending on risk and criticality. But we would agree as part of the plan what quarter this work was going to go in, and that was based on priority areas. It's not an exact science because some of it we have to do at the end of the year, as you can imagine, because of doing it, having sufficient samples within the financial year to actually cover. With regard to which audits we would drop, if we had to drop at that given time, whatever was left, and obviously it's based on priorities, getting priorities through first, we would risk assess at that stage against ESPO's risk management indices, impact and likelihood, and come to an agreed decision with the Treasurer, myself, Neil as head of audit, and also convey it to this committee as well for approval.
Yeah. Ultimately, it goes back to what are we doing the plan for? Well, obviously, it's for the assurance to the members of the committee, but ultimately, we end up in having to reach an opinion. That opinion needs to be strong. So, if we're going to drop audits, we need to know which ones are dropping and how much of a priority they are.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay. So we are actually, as per the recommendations from Finance and Audit Committee on the 15th of February, we're asked to support the methodology used as a basis for developing the internal audit plan and approve the internal audit plan for 2023-24. Is that agreed? Unanimous. I didn't see that. Oh, they can't vote, can they? Right. So the next item on the agenda is the public procurement rules update, and it's agenda 6. It provides an update of the new public procurement rules. Maurice Campbell will introduce the report, which is covered on pages 19 to 34 in your pack.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's quite a short report with quite a lengthy annex. So how the report is structured, it provides an update on the legislative journey of the procurement bill, provides an indication of the timetable as best we know it now. It details and talks about some preparations that ESPO are having to do, and also about some of the challenges. Attached to the report is an appendix with a detailed legal commentary, and then there's some conclusions. I'll just go back over some of those headings. In terms of legislative agenda, the procurement bill has made successive journey through the House of Lords. It's now partway through the House of Commons. It's at its second and third reading stage, so it's making really successful progression through that. The expectation is that the bill should receive royal assent sometime over the next couple of months this year. Thereafter, the next stage, which I call the heavy lifting, will be to develop the secondary legislation and the detailed regulations. That's really about the how, so that's the real detail. That process is out to public consultation, and the expectation is that will conclude spring 2024. While that's taken place, the Cabinet Office is also developing a very detailed and comprehensive training package for the whole of the public sector. ESPO will take full advantage of that, and we already have someone who's lined up to be a super user. The report then goes on to talk about some of the procurement challenges for us as an organisation. This will cover our processes, our policies, our systems, our people, and the transition plan. So what have we done? We've set up a project team that meet monthly. We're going through the bill in its current version, line by line, to work out the implications for ESPO as a business, working out the implications against those headings as described, our processes, our systems, our people, and transition. That's being logged, and actions are assigned to individuals with follow-up action to take place. The bill will force us to look at how we're structured, just make sure that we've got the right resources in the right places, particularly when it comes to the transparency part of the bill. We've recognised that we'll need some additional resources in that part of our business. We also need to fill the gaps. It's been a bit of a challenge recently in terms of procurement vacancies, currently running about 16 out of a full head count. It should be around 85. So we have to try and make sure that we have the right sort of resources at the right level of seniority, because we are going to have to run two regimes side by side. So that will bring its own unique challenges. The other challenges are trying to keep the team sort of focused. There's been a huge shift in terms of the timelines for the implementation of this bill. It keeps on moving, so there's real ambiguity. So we really have to keep our team focused. And like I said, due emphasis on the training program. The next part of the report has an annex, and that's a sort of detailed legal commentary of the bill as at the 14th of December. And like I've said, that comes with a health warning, because since this was written, there's been two other further iterations of the bill. So my team will go down and look at those new versions of the bill in some detail and work out the implications. And then we move to conclusions, really. And it's just to say that we believe the procurement bill is progressing well. We believe that we're ready and organised to meet some of the challenges. We get and we understand what the broad objective of the bill is. We get that the government is trying to marry some of the best practices of the private sector in terms of speed and flexibility with the rigours of public sector procurement in terms of transparency and fairness, but without the excessive red tape. So ESPO and my team will keep closely as the bill continues to develop, and also as the detailed regulations are developed over the coming year. And we will bring forward further updates at an appropriate time. So really, members are asked to note the contents of this report. No decisions are required. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions or comments from anybody? Sorry, that's all right.
Just a question around the learning and development package and how it will be implemented, really, because you said that you'd have a super user and project teams are looking at a structured approach, but also you mentioned about the challenges, the 16 vacancies we've got and the old and the new system running in parallel to each other. So I was just interested in how that learning and development package will be implemented and what the challenges are you see around that.
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question. Well, there'll be in two parts, really, because there's the central developed training that the Cabinet Office is making available to all contracting authorities. And there's training developed depending on what level you are within a procurement organisation. And my direction to my team that everyone would have to avail themselves of that. In addition to that, ESPO as a business has also made resources available for additional investment for top-up training. So in addition to training our core procurement people, we also need to train other people outside of the procurement area in ESPO who commission contracts to be trained as well. We also need to train some of our supply community as well. So yes, it'll be a huge sort of challenge, but a lot of effort is taking place right now to get our recruitment right. And we've had some recent successes. because we're finding that whilst we're having trouble recruiting some young graduates into the business, we are having more success in the mature end of the market, so to speak, and people want to change in lifestyle because we offer a very good work-life balance. So it's a challenge, but we're ready to meet it.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair. Marsh, I'm just wondering about those of us who have procurement responsibility and oversight. Is there any additional training package that you think is going to be helpful to members of this committee, for example, so that you can be adequately challenged and supported?
The Cabinet Office is developing a course for very senior managers or leaders at strategic level. So once that is available, we can communicate that out.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the running the two systems side by side, is that just for the 6-month implementation period, or is there any danger it could be longer than that? And what do you see as the main risks of running sort of the two systems side by side?
I think two side by side could extend beyond the sort of 6 months. It depends on when you start a procurement. It will end in whatever regime it started. And your second question is what are the risks? The risks for me is making sure that I've got enough bums on seat and that they're adequately trained. And I'm quite grateful that we have made the resources available, and we're tapping into also the central available resources from the Cabinet Office.
Any other questions? Can I just ask a question? Obviously, it's a challenge, but if you manage to overcome those challenges, do you think this is going to be some benefit for ESPO, isn't it? It's make it more flexible. Yeah.
I think, well, yes, I think at the front end, yes, there will be some flexibility, but at the back end of the procurement exercise, there might be some more work. But actually, when I look further ahead, I think we may attract some more customers who want that procurement shield and are worried about the complexities of new rules. They may come to us as a kind of centre of excellence. So actually, I think there'll be an uptake in our business.
Opportunity, not just a threat. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I should have reeled this one out at the same time. My question is about the supplier registration system. As you say in the report, it's silent and you're not quite sure. I know we've had a discussion about that there's sort of a piloting using existing software, but any project that involves large-scale IT projects and central government is fraught with expense and difficulty. And I just wonder what your sense is about that particular area.
No, I do share your concerns, and having spent many years working on central IT systems in government, I share your in the experience. So I understand. The Cabinet Office, this underpins the whole bill, actually. So for proper transparency, you do need a centralised system. And what they're doing is bolting on an existing system, so they're not starting from scratch. So they're trying to de-risk it from that perspective. But they have made resources available, and people are working on the background. So the hope is it will be ready next year. But I suspect there might be a lag, so the bill might come into force, but some of that extra bits might come a little bit later.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, we are asked to note the report, so I assume we can do that. So thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is item 7, which is the Finance and Audit Subcommittee Terms of Reference and Changes to Risk Management Strategy. It's proposed to changes. Refers to proposed changes to the terms of reference of the Finance and Audit Subcommittee and consequential changes to the risk management strategy. And I understand Gary Tapp is going to introduce the report, and which is covered on pages 35 to 60 of your pack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to start the conversation by giving a thank you to the Finance and Audit Committee subcommittee members for reviewing and approving those previously proposed changes and recommending the changes to the management committee. So currently, the Finance and Audit Subcommittee has no powers to approve any reports or accept recommendations on behalf of the Management Committee. So the intention really of this paper is to try and give the Finance and Audit Subcommittee some real purpose in providing a limited range of powers and really building on the existing delegations. Those existing delegations are mainly related to the financial planning process, setting of financial performance targets, and financial monitoring of our performance through the year as well. Where we're looking to add additional areas is in certain core areas of the finance and audit area. So these include internal audit, external audit, the risk management process, and our annual governance statements. So I'll give a few examples just to kind of outline what some of those limited delegations are. So these examples include the ability to approve the internal audit reports that Matt outlined earlier, but able to escalate some of those high importance recommendations to management committee. Another area is around approving the results of the external audit, and again, a similar ability to escalate any material issues to management committee as well. In terms of the risk management process, again, Matt outlined slightly earlier, really overseeing that risk management process. So making sure that our corporate risk register is really well maintained, but also making sure that ESPO maintains a really healthy risk management culture across the organisation as well. And also reviewing the annual director statement on the effectiveness of those internal controls. And reviewing that organisational approach to risk management and ensuring some of those contract procedure rules are being maintained and reviewed as well. So I think overall, the changes proposed to the Finance and Audit Committee give some real purpose to that Finance and Audit Committee and take some of that heavy lifting away from the Management Committee as well. So from our perspective at ESPO, it gives us some real benefits and getting some really good advice, and we saw that through the budget process at the last Finance and Audit Committee. So at the last Finance and Audit Committee, the subcommittee members reviewed and approved the new terms of reference and responsibilities, and have recommended to Management Committee for approval.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this item? Councillor Poland.
Thank you. Just to comment, really, I think that it makes sense that obviously we have the subcommittee that's specifically there to look at these items, that they then have the ability to actually make decisions on it. For me, this is a sensible move, and I'm happy to support that.
Thank you. Any other comments at all? No. Okay, so we seem to have approval on that. So we're all in agreement with the extended terms and reference of the subcommittee as outlined in the report. So if we can minute that, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Director's Progress Update Report, item 8 on your papers. Christian will introduce his progress update since the previous meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. So, yeah, my normal progress update covers three things: the financials, the operations, and some people updates. In terms of financial performance, I think you've got a little bit of information about January. January was slightly behind budget, but ahead in terms of sales perspective, but just as a function of costs taken and a slightly lower margin. But the key thing for me is after 10 months, a surplus of £5.8 million has been created, which is £0.6 million ahead of our budget. So overall, it's fair to say we've had a pleasing demand this year, with sales volumes well ahead of budget and higher demands being seen throughout. Similarly, our rebate income from our frameworks is £1.2 million ahead of budget, and our costs have been controlled with expenditure of £20.1 million, which, although is £1 million higher than budget, it reflects the higher volume and distribution costs associated with fulfilling those additional orders. So as a reminder, at paragraph 10, our full year expectation is 5.7 million. There's a typo there, it says 5.8, but it's a 5.7 million pound budget. We expect to exceed that budget, and we're giving a guidance range to members of a surplus between 5.9 and 6 million pounds for the year. Next section gives you the insight in terms of that next level of detail on sales and margin. You can see our total sales were 6.5 million better than budget and £8 million better than last year. Our gross profit margin for stores is at 28.4, which is slightly lower than budget, which reflects all the inflationary pressures and what we've done to try and shield our customers throughout that trading period. Our direct sales are 18.5 million and 2.5 million ahead of budget. And our gross profit margin percentage for DEX was at 15.3, which is 0.5% ahead of budget. Margin from our gas service is closely in line with budget. And therefore, you can see our overall gross profit margin at 25.9 million is 1.6 million better than budget. You then have the section that outlines our expenditure. I've given the total expenditure number. I think the key thing to articulate is expenditure as a percentage of sales. That's a really key KPI, and you can see that's at 27.8% and 1.2% better than budget, which shows me my kind of cost efficiency. In terms of our limited companies, which serve the private sector, there's some details in the private pack, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I think the trends are important, which you can see that international sales are way ahead of budget, which is pleasing, but our EduZone sales to nurseries still haven't recovered, but are recovering. The latest position is we're 18% down on budget as of this week, so they may recover a bit further, but they are slightly behind. So when we get into our full year expectation, we can see a number of kind of risks and opportunities. But considering all of those, we believe our latest guidance for the full year, the range of 5.9 to 6 million, that would represent a record year for ESPO, and I think would be an excellent, showing excellent real-term growth since COVID, which is really important in terms of how we recovered since that event. So if I take us on to the operational progress section, I'm not going to read out all the numbers in here, you'll be pleased to know, but what you can ascertain from reading it is that we have a number of ways we measure our operational performance, and they are all to target, which is really pleasing. Two very important things are FIFO rating, which tells us what our customers think about us, and you can see our ratings improved to 94%, and we've achieved a Trusted Service Award from FIFO as a result, with an overall score of 4.3 out of 5. We also do a piece of work with the Institute of Customer Service, which we benchmark. We do a benchmarking survey, and we can see the results are really good. We scored 85.3 compared to 83 in 2021, and we are 6 points above the UK benchmark score. The likelihood of customers remaining with ESPO and recommending ESPO are also high in comparison to the UK average, and obviously that's incredibly important to us. Unsurprisingly linked to that, you can see our stock availability has recovered strongly. We have stock availability of 98.8%, and that's something that's really not only helping the efficiency of how we operate, but obviously bringing in new customers to ESPO. You have an update on facilities management and an update on 3 minor health and safety issues, which I won't cover here. I will just give you a short update on the progress to extend the Grove Park warehouse. That is moving forward under the governance of the project board. The focus is currently on preparing for planning permission and onboarding the principal contractor. We still have an expected completion date of Q2 next year, and obviously I'll provide a full update once that work has commenced. Final section is the staffing section. You've got some information on our sickness absence. You can see an improvement in January to 0.67 days from December 0.81 days, and we've provided a kind of trend line that you can monitor against. We are still struggling with recruitment and retention. Like others, we're looking at a resourcing advisor role, which will concentrate on marketing ESPO vacancies, optimising our recruitment processes and analysing recruitment and retention data so that we can do all that we can to attract and keep talent within ESPO. We are also consulting our staff around the creation of a multi-faith prayer and contemplation space at the Leicester office. This will support us as an inclusive employer, and it's one of the really good things we can do now we're working in a different way and we can make space available for things like this. Finally, just to let you know, the ESPO leadership team held its quarterly review of health, safety and wellbeing, and the major risk records and top risks are attached as Appendix 2. Members are asked to note and support the contents of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. A very positive report. Any questions or comments? That's all right.
Just a comment really, and to say congratulations to the customer service team in achieving, well, one, handling the number of calls that they're taking, but in the times that they're managing to respond as well, and particularly as Christian's just mentioned about retention and recruitment. So I think the performance in that is still high, and to note that 53% of orders have now gone on to direct onto line, and that I know it's an ambition to get more on for that handling. But just a comment, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And any other comments? No, I'd like to add to my congratulations to the team on what is a very positive outcome for the year. So
thank you, and I'll make sure both those comments are passed on to the team. So thank you.
It would be grateful if you do that. Okay. So we were asked to note the report, which obviously we've done. So we'll move on to the next item now. Date of the next meeting. Members should note that the next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on the 28th of June 2023 at 10:30 a.m. at County Hall, Glenfield. So if you can make a note in your diaries. Item 10, any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent, and as I previously said, there are no urgent items. So we move to item 11, which is actually exclusion of the press and public. So I move that in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of the business on the grounds that they will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information.